Welcome to another fantastic episode of Who's Your Band. I'm kicking it off today for the first time in a very long time because this is normally Jeff's job, but Jeff's in a basement somewhere in Brooklyn getting ready to go on and do a set. So let's introduce my wonderful co-host, Jeffrey Paul.
Hey, guys. Sorry about the lighting, but I actually did not want to miss this interview and get the opportunity to talk to our guest today. So, Sean, why don't you introduce her?
Well, Marsha, you're actually in for a treat because seeing Jeff in this light is much better for your eyes, actually. One of my favorite people that was ever on television, I will say that without hesitation, star of Night Court, star of Empty Nest, one of my favorite shows that gets no credit at all. And stand-up comedian extraordinaire, Miss Marsha Warfield. How you doing, Marsha?
I'm fine. How are you? Thank you so much. I almost didn't recognize me.
That's great. Good. Marsha, I wanted to ask you before I have to, because I can't stay the whole time, and I had to actually talk to you. Right off the top, I want to know how much of an influence was Mom's Mabley to you in your career and in life in general?
Well, Mom's was almost before my time. As a young woman, Mom's was, she came along with the Phyllis Dillers, more so than the Joan Rivers and, and the Toady Fields was in there somewhere. But Mom's was somebody I watched on the Ed Sullivan Show. And she was somebody I knew only, I didn't know her party records. I didn't know her background. I didn't know a lot of stuff. So as a child, I watched Moms and Carol Burnett and Lucy, and they had almost the same kind of effect and impact. She was, to me, in that group, and I found her later. After I started doing stand-up, I went back and got her records, and I was amazed at her balls. Just that she has one line that just floored me. She said she wanted to talk to President Johnson. And so she went to the White House and she saw him coming across the White House lawn. So she hollered at him. She said, "Hey, Lyndon, come here, boy." And I thought that was about the ballsiest thing I had ever heard.
I think she's an inspiration for anyone who says they can't make it or there's something holding them down. Sean, are you familiar with who Mom's Mabley is?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you know her story. For maybe our listeners who aren't quite sure, Mom's Mabley was a comedian. I think she came out of the vaudeville scene. She was gay, but she had to keep it in the closet. She was a Black woman, and she didn't let anything keep her down and prevent her from doing what she wanted to do. And so anyone who says, I can't deal with or makes mistakes, I would say, look at Mom's Mabley. She had the deck stacked against her and was able to overcome. And she was a success at what she did.
Well, see, Mom's, there were a couple of things at play. Like I mentioned her with Carol Burnett and Lucy because she assumed a character. Right. And when I started doing stand-up, I wanted to be a monologist. I wanted to do what the big boys did. I wanted to grab the mic and speak my mind as myself. And so Mom's comedy was a little different than mine. But my fantasy as I've gotten older and learned more about her, if I could have hung out with Moms in the 30s and 40s in Harlem and on the Chitlin circuit, man, we would have gotten in so much trouble.
So where did you grow up and how did you start making like your entrance into comedy?
I grew up in Chicago, and this story is like, let me pull it out. I started in 1974. Comedy at that time was transitioning from cabaret. In fact, nightclubs were transitioning. The whole scene was transitioning from the cabaret style supper club kind of thing. They were all closing. And this new era of open mics was blossoming, was beginning to sprout. And there was an article in the paper about a comedian named Tom Dreesen, who was now on his own. He had been teamed with another comedian named Tim Reed, and they were the first interracial comedy team.
Is that the same Tim Reed from WKRP?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Tim had just left, I think, to go work on the show. And so he was in California. And so the team broke up. And Tom was opening this open mic we had never heard of at a deli called the Pickle Barrel. And said anybody could come out and try out, that they had some regulars, but anybody could come out and try out and see, if they could do it. And he called them all virgins. And so I went one night. I told a friend of mine I was going, never went. She got tired of me and she put me in the car one day and took me across town and said, going on. She introduced herself to Tom as my manager, I believe. And 6 hours later, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I went on and made my debut.
And didn't Tom Dreesen do like 197 appearances on the Tonight Show?
I think he did more than some permanent host. He's done like gazillions. He was a very, he's a lot of really, really good people came out of that era.
Who else came out from that mic in Chicago? Do you remember?
Judy Tenuta.
Oh wow! Yeah.
James Wesley Jackson. There was Tom. There was my friend Brad Sanders, who went on to produce on the Tom Joyner Show, produce a series called "It's Your World." There were just a lot of it. Then when I left a year or so later, a lot of those guys who were hanging out, they ended up on Car Wash.
Oh, classic, iconic movie. Just saw it about a week or so ago. So how did you make the leap? How long did it take you to go from being an open micer to start writing, I think, on the Richard Pryor show?
It took the leap from my reality to somebody's imagination, and people have been running with it ever since. I never wrote on the Richard Pryor show. I was a kid. I wrote on the Richard Pryor show.
I thought for some reason you wrote on the Richard Pryor show.
Not you. I get it all the time. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Okay. So
I like that. That's like every time I have a show, they always advertise me as from Last Comic Standing. I tried out in season 4 and they put me on the intro for the first episode. I never made it on television.
Right.
And that thing haunts me for the last 10 years.
And I've corrected it and it keeps coming.
Oh, I hate it. Because it's like, it's not mine. It's not my credit. I don't like that. I'd rather them say nothing about me than give me a shitty fake credit.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, I was like, that's why I wanted to find out about that. So follow-up question then, how long did it take you to actually find your voice and become comfortable as a comedian and get your groove in your style going?
I think I'll get there tomorrow. It's a constant evolution and growth process, and we think we know ourselves in our 20s. We don't know squat. Mm-hmm. And I made it through. I like to say I made it through as far as I did in my 20s because I was too stupid to be scared. I was too stupid to think I couldn't. And so I did. And I kind of grew up with that new industry and happened to be in the right time. You have to remember it was the mid-70s. So we were in the Black Power era. We were also in the era of Blaxploitation. So there and Eric Monty had movies and TV shows that were being produced, comedies, and he had Good Times and the Jeffersons, and these were things we had never had before. So coming along, I had a few more opportunities, limited though they may have been, and managed to ride that and got lucky enough to be a part of it.
Did music play a role, help you? Like, did you listen to any type of music that may have kind of like got you psyched up or calmed down or inspired you, like in your performance and getting through?
Do you know me? Have we slept together? Are we in the same? How do you know this? I'm a Motown baby. I talk about it in my act. I was born in doo-wop. And so that was the first kind of music I was exposed to, but it was evolving.
Which artists did you like? Which
my mother Motown was a big, her favorite song was In the Still of the Day.
My mother too. That, yeah. Great.
Growing up, like I said, and then Motown came along, and now I'm also from Chicago, so there's a big blues influence. There was a big R&B influence. There was a Chicago sound,
right?
But Motown came along and dressed up the R&B and crossed it over in a way it had not been done before. Took it out of the juke joints, back rooms, and payola scams and into respectability. And so I that kind of had an influence on me, but I still had a love for the more basic, more bluesy, more jazzy. It was bebop and that rock was, and black rockers, and pre-Prince, Sly Stone, and all of those people. And so R&B still has a big influence. It's a big part of who I am, and hopefully will be a big part of what I do on stage.
One of my favorite memories of a concert was my mom was a huge musical influence on me and still is to this day. And she dragged me to an old doo-wop show. Now I was probably like 10, maybe 10 or 11. And, at that point, like a lot of the people from that era is gone. And they have like their nephews or their sons filling in, stuff like that. And they brought this guy on stage named Clarence Frogman Henry. And the guy needed help getting on stage. And I'm looking at my mom, going, what the fuck are you dragging me to? And he gets up there and he sings this song, I Don't Know Why I Love You, But I Do. And this guy had 20,000 people standing, dancing, singing, and did one song, put his hand up and walked off stage. And I was like, this is the coolest motherfucker I have ever seen in my life. I have such an affinity for that era because it's I hate to say it's a dying era of that.
It's a commercialized era. The whole thing that's so commercialized. When we were coming up in an era where kids were rebelling against the oppressive things that we were inheriting, and before the generation before. So it was the kids breaking the barriers, the segregated barriers, to go listen to Chuck Berry and Little Richard, that had a big influence on the whole cultural growth, not just of the music, but of socially. These kids were saying, no, I'm not going to not listen to that. It's not, and you end up getting guys like Buddy Holly coming along, and the doo-wop era was black and white. There was a big influence in it. So we were in an era where it was about the music, and it was about the revolution of the music. And you, like I said, you got guys like Sly Stone doing a more rock kind of thing, which is a throwback to the Chuck Berry kind of thing, but still, it was innovative. And say what you will about them. There are many things to say about Ike Turner, but he was an innovator.
Yeah, he was.
Musically. Other than that, I don't know the man, and I don't really want to talk about him. But those innovations and the embrace of them by all American kids was a bigger influence than I think sometimes it gets lost nowadays, and it's become so compartmentalized that it gets labeled as something it probably wasn't.
That's the thing I hate was when you put things in a box. And I think, anything artistically, there's always room to grow out of that box. Sean and I are both both comedians, but we're both inspired by music. So like before shows, I like to sometimes listen to something like, I'll listen to like maybe some heavy metal music. Sean will listen to Taylor Swift. What do you like to listen to before like you go on?
The Temptations.
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
Have you seen the play yet?
No, but I'm from the original era. I remember the original group, and there have been so many Temptations. I mean, it's like people, you don't get any bragging rights from saying or related to somebody in the Temptations. Like my uncle was in the Temptations. They go, everybody's uncle was in the Temptations. But they managed to maintain this somehow with all the personnel changes. They managed to stay the Temptations. You always know it's them, and they always rise up. You expect groups to fall off after a while, and then they'll come out with something else and like, oh, you did it again. So no, I like R&B and a little smooth.
You think Lionel Richie sold his soul to the devil because like he's in his like late 70s and he looks better than he did 30 years ago?
Wait, is he in his late 70s?
Oh, he's got to be.
Yeah, he got to be. Well, late, maybe, I don't know, late. Somebody said that about me and really caught me up short.
72.
I did a article and it said, and here she is at almost 70, back out here doing it. And I'm like, what the fuck? You didn't have to put it like that. You didn't have to say that.
Lionel Richie wound up being pretty good.
Mature or something. Me, I had to go that far, but yeah, we are.
Yeah, you look great. Yeah, how do you feel?
I feel fine. I mean, I really do. Right now, I feel I can't complain. Well, I could complain, but it wouldn't matter, and it would be a lie because I've been recognizing that I feel pretty good lately.
Have you been able to get back out and get on the road a little bit and do some shows?
I've been working here at the Comedy Cellar in Vegas. It's at the Rio.
Oh, yeah.
And I do.
Is that where you live now?
I'm not there this week. I'm there in early March.
Are you living in Vegas or are you living in California?
I live in Vegas.
Oh, it's nice. It's end of February now, so it's only like 98 degrees during the day.
No, it's cold.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean it's starting to warm up. This is like the first day we're supposed to break 70, but we've been in the highs of 60 something, lows of 40.
It was 18 degrees here the other day.
I love it.
Ugh. Can't take it.
I love it.
When did you decide when you're in Chicago to make that big leap and go out to California?
Again, show business was transitioning and the Tonight Show had moved to California. The Sullivan Show was going off the air, I believe. Variety shows were dying. The industry had shifted to Los Angeles. And Chicago's stock in trade was improv. And those, guys were exploding.
Yeah.
The Bill Murrays and the Second City guys were all over TV and they were exploding. But the clubs were gone. The supper clubs were gone. And they're the only nightclub in town. And Zanies was brand new. I don't even know if it was open yet. I don't think it was open yet. There was no Zanies. And so it was like, not a lot to do. The things I want to do, I want to work. I'm going to California. So I told my mother I was going for my birthday, about a year and a half after I started.
How old were you?
I was 22.
Oh, wow. That took some guts.
Back then, people were still hitchhiking across country. And it became a thing. It became like a mode of transportation that many people preferred. A lot of people saw the whole country. The young people were hitchhiking, and then there came that tragedy where the young woman lost her arms, and it was a horrible thing, and that they stopped hitchhiking. Okay, but hitchhiking was my preferred method of transportation, and when I told her that, she told me
But
no.
you hitchhiked from Chicago to LA?
I had it all planned out. I was going to go stand on the freeway and hitchhike to California. That was my plan.
That's it's one of those things that like you really don't ever hear about anymore is hitchhiking.
No.
But the weird thing is I live in the suburbs, right? And I have a guy, and he is a scraggly looking guy, long hair, bushy. Every day he's out around the corner from my house hitchhiking every single day.
Does he ever get anywhere, Sean?
I don't know. I see him on different parts. Like the main road is like 3 miles long. I see him on different parts of the road. Unless the stupid asshole is just going from one side of the street to the other, I have no idea. But it was like such a weird thing you brought that up because I haven't seen anybody hitchhike from that guy in 30 years, probably.
No, it was up pretty immediate. 1 minute the kids were moving out of their homes across the country and going to either to Haight or to Los Angeles and sleeping on the street. And I mean, that was a thing back then. And then all of a sudden, nope, we're not doing that anymore. And it just ended. But they also had services where you could drive people's cars for them across the country or wherever they wanted to go. And they called them driveaways.
Yeah.
And so some friends and I, we were going to do a drive-away and go to California. And my mother told that too.
When you get to LA, okay, what's your first break and how long does it take for something good to happen to you?
Getting to LA was good. I got it as a birthday present. It was my mother's birthday present to me at I don't know what the name of the hotel is now. It was the Continental Hyatt House next door to the Comedy Store. 2 weeks, round trip ticket. If it don't work out, come home. I'm like,
the old Riot Hyatt, right?
Yeah.
Now it's the Andaz. Yeah. That's the Andaz now. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was my plan. So I went, and as soon as I got there, I redeemed the other half of the ticket and got a job. And I had no intention of ever going home. So I got there like on a Friday, Monday night. It must have been the 8th of March, 1976. I had been going every night, but I went to sign up to open mic for the open mic. I went on, and the young man named Argus Hamilton went on.
Mm-hmm.
And they told us both that we could start calling in. And I was like, okay, but I was going to start calling in anyway.
Holy shit.
And so that's how I started.
I just watched a series on Amazon called Fat Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. And I stumbled upon this. And let me just tell you something. It was 3 of the greatest hours I've seen on television in a long, long time. Jeff, if you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. It's basically about the Comedy Store on Tuesday nights with Guy Torrey, who really broke out this amazing night of comedy for the Black comic community. I didn't realize, I knew this for a long time, but I didn't realize how influential Black comedians were to me. Because I can remember growing up listening to old Red Fox tapes and listening to, Eddie Murphy and things like that. But Bernie Mac, for me, is the most underrated, underappreciated comedian to ever walk the planet.
Didn't you just post that this week?
Robin Harris, I was talking about.
That's okay. Yeah. Right.
Robin Harris and Bernie Mac, to me, are 2 of the most criminally underrated, underappreciated comics. And I think it's because they really did, go before their time.
But there are hundreds of other young Black, or they're not young now, but I came up with so many young Black performers who, for various reasons, either they fell by the wayside. Nobody ever heard from them, but they're very talented and And whenever I think about that, and I think back even further, back to minstrelsy and when Black performers couldn't perform at all, and then when they could, they had to cork up and do that thing. And I think about all the people who said, no, I can't do that, and whose dreams never got a chance to be dreamed. And I feel, sad for them. And I'm like, okay, this joke's for you, Aunt Sophronia, because you should have been able to follow.
Well, we see that too. I mean, we see there's some comics on our scene that are criminally they're brilliant comics, and they haven't made it for some unknown reason, and they just stop doing it. And then you see pieces of garbage who are having specials on television, and it kind of like pisses you off because you want to be in that spot at some point. But who was like one of your favorites from that era working at the Comedy Store?
Oh, everybody. There were so many, but I wanted to make the point that what you're saying is, yes, there are in every aspect, there are people who will never, for whatever reason, get what they want. But there are some people who, like Charlie Hill, the lone native comic I've ever known. He was working back then. What are the odds that he was going to get in movies and TV shows? Not big, but he did get some recognition, which was huge, considering that there was no chance in hell that he would. And I wanted to just say, think about the women.
Sure.
Think about the Hispanic, the Asian comedians who, none of them. And then if you combine them, you got a Black woman who's don't know she's gay, and closeted gay Black woman.
That was my original point about Mom's Mabley.
Whatever, there's no chance.
Yeah.
But you just keep plugging and you don't quit, because if you quit, nothing's going to happen. But the scope, I think sometimes when we read about stuff like that, we don't understand the scope now, of the impact of what that is and what that means and what that does.
Do you remember was there a specific night where there was industry in the crowd that got you your TV deal?
Oh, there were a few. I won the San Francisco Comedy Competition in 1979, and then they had a few months later, they had a national competition, and I won that too. And
what did you beat out in those competitions? You remember?
I don't care.
I fucking love her.
I remember Michael Winslow was in it, Mike Davis, Larry
Miller?
Yes, Larry Miller.
These guys all went on to have good careers.
Guys. I think,
These old guys who had really big careers. Yeah.
Dana Carvey came in. Robin Williams did that competition. A lot of people did that competition, and they're still doing it. They just had they're like 900th comedy competition a few months ago. So I did that. But I think the night at the Comedy Store that stands out to me most was the night Richard Pryor was there, and he's working out material for one of his specials back then, which were released on closed circuit and stuff like that in theaters. But comedians don't like to follow people like Richard Pryor. So everybody was coming up to him and saying, "Can I go on before you? Can I go on before you?" And these were people who were very, very good people, very good, big name comedians now. And he was always gracious, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead." So he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, "No, I'll follow you." He said, "You sure?" Everybody said, I don't have a problem. That's how I used to get spots at the Comedy Store when there weren't any available. I would volunteer to follow whoever was the hot comic. Because being from Chicago, I had been taught, don't matter who is on before you, you do your thing.
Yep.
So I just said no. And he went on. I went to get a drink. and I'm waiting for my drink, and comics start running back to the bar going, right now, Richard's introducing you. Right now, Richard's introducing you. I'm like, what do you mean, Richard? He's introducing you. And so I ran up the stairs, and I just want you to, I think you'll like her, ladies and gentlemen, Marsha Warfield.
That's incredible.
I almost cried. It was
that. It's surreal.
Yeah.
The validation as a performer from that moment was huge.
I love hearing stories. Like I had a story where I was working at the Borgata in Atlantic City downstairs in like the 1,000-seat theater, and Chris Rock was working upstairs in the convention center, which is like 10,000 people. Chris is my all-time favorite comic. All time. Friend of mine was opening for him. I make the phone call. I go, look, I don't give a fuck what I gotta do. I gotta meet the guy. I gotta shake his hand. Like I've been idolizing this guy for 30 years, even before I was a comic. I go up, I introduce myself, and he goes, what time you go on? I'm like, 8 o'clock.
Wait, what was that impression of?
That's Chris. That's my Chris Rock impersonation.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure. But that's all right.
Okay, fuck both of you, number one. So he comes down and he stands on the side of the stage and he's watching me. Now I'm shitting my pants because this is my favorite person in the world. And as far as comedy, I get introduced to the next person. I walk off and I go, what'd you think? He goes, you didn't suck. And he just walked away. Didn't shake my hand. You didn't suck. To me, that tells me I was fucking fantastic that night.
Guys, I got to go. Marsha, it was so nice meeting you. John, take it from here.
Thank you, buddy.
Bye.
Now that this fuck is gone, we can have some fun now, right? But
yeah, I got the candy.
I really, really loved Fat Tuesdays. It brought back a lot of memories for me of all the people that I was listening to. What was it like making that jump from stand-up going into television?
Oh, which time?
First time.
The first time was probably something like the Merv Griffin Show.
Oh, wow.
Soul Train.
No shit.
I did Soul Train 2 or 3 times. I did a lot of the Soul Train Awards. I did the Soul Train Comedy Awards. Don Cornelius was very generous with people from Chicago.
And he's a cool motherfucker too. Like you don't get much cooler than him though.
So I got to do those.
Okay.
And then I got the Pryor show through Mooney.
Oh, wow.
And that was supposed to just be one background sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up doing maybe 2 apiece, and all of us came from the Comedy Store. They cast pretty much all of the ensemble from the Comedy Store.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought we were, cool. We got our little week's pay and could get our union cards. And so we were good with that. But then Richard said, hey, y'all just as good as anybody else we can find. We'll use you again. So we got to do all 4 shows. And that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking things. Just being in the presence of Richard Pryor and the people that he attracted around him and the people that did the show. It's huge for a 22, 23-year-old kid. But then to have to do that scene, that eating across the table scene, with no rehearsal, no script, you just sit there. They told us you sit and you would seduce each other with food. We'll have the food when we tape. Okay. And to make it even worse, Richard got married that morning.
Oh, wow.
Surprise. Nobody knew he was getting married. He was late coming. So the run-through we were supposed to have, that's when they said, okay, you'll eat the film, we'll film it, then that's that. So all this drama is going on, the press is around, everything's going up, blah, 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 blah. The first sketch they shoot that night is me I don't have any experience. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I have no dialogue. I don't know what, and I'm the straight woman, which means I've got to drive the scene.
Wow.
Everybody said, trust your instincts. So I took a deep breath. They opened the curtain and I trusted my instincts.
And here you are.
And here I am.
What was it like joining a pretty popular TV show into the fourth season? I know that Selma had passed away.
Selma and Flo.
Yeah, I know that they had passed away. What was it like stepping into that? Because it was pretty successful at that point.
It was extremely. It was the number 4 show in the country.
I can remember growing up watching that show. Even then, I knew it was a hysterical ensemble cast.
It was John Larroquette and Harry were being nominated for Emmys every year, and John happened to win. But they kept being nominated. The show was an Emmy-nominated series.
Yeah,
and was the anchor of the must-see TV lead-in to drama, and so and I had no experience again, other than a couple of things here and there. And so I told my agent, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to take a class, do something. So, and I said, it's got to be specific, something for TV. I don't want to just, whatever. And you got to learn how to suffer. I didn't teach an acting class. So he found one, and I go and do the first week. And then they say, buy this book before you come back next week, read the first chapter, and then we'll go from there. I bought the book. I sat down to read it. I opened it up. The first thing it said was, the key to acting is to keep it simple. So I closed the book, put it down, never went back to the class, showed up to work on time, and did it ever since. And the first day, Harry called me over to the bench to say hi. Well, the first, on this rehearsal, he said, hi, how you doing? I'm hi, how you doing? And I said, to tell you the truth, I'm scared to death. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. He said, I don't know what I'm doing either. I said, you'll be fine.
Love that.
And that was that.
And now you're on for what, 8 seasons?
The show ran for 8.5, 9 seasons, and I was there from the 4th season.
From the 4th to 5. Okay. And you go right into, you did your own talk show for a little while too.
Yes.
I don't remember that. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I saw that. I don't remember it.
No, and I was supposed to, I had been in talks with another production company to do a nighttime show. They wanted an urban nighttime show. And I was so excited. That was right up my alley. I was the R&B, the thing. I was going to do that. And it was pretty much a go. And then NBC said, we got the right to first refusal. We don't have a nighttime slot because Letterman and Leno and Letterman and Carson were holding those, and Tom Schneider, I believe.
Late show.
Yeah. And then, so they said, we have daytime. You're going to take it or leave it. So I took it.
What was it like working on an empty nest?
One more caveat.
All right, good.
The nighttime show went to Arsenio Hall.
Ah, okay. I always preferred the Arsenio Hall show to most of the other television shows. There was more of a young, hipper show.
I've known Arsenio since 1975. So
wow.
I was, I was upset that I didn't get it, but
Of course. So tell me about Empty Nest, because I think that's one of the most underrated sitcoms over the last 30 years. What was it like working on that show?
Well, I've worked with so many great people. I say I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. And to say you work with Pryor, you've worked with, Carlin, you worked with everybody, Red Fox. And to say I work with Richard Mulligan, one of the nicest men in the world, one of the funniest people in the world, most professional, it was just a great, calm, nice experience. And I got to play a character that I wasn't ashamed of. So I was happy. I was very happy on that show.
It's a spinoff of one of the greatest television shows of all time. And I get a lot of flack being a 45-year-old straight married man who loves the Golden Girls as much as I do.
Loves the Golden Girls.
It is I think it's one of the greatest written sitcoms of all time. And it's four of the most iconic characters. If you took one of those iconic characters and put them on any show, they're going to stand out. You take all four of them, and you have four of them on one show. It's very, I think Friends is probably the only like ensemble show since then where you can say the same thing, where you can take out the characters and make their own TV show from it. What did you wind up doing after Empty Nest went off the air? Did you go back on the road?
Yeah, started doing stand-up again. I was working pretty steadily doing private shows, public shows, working clubs, colleges, concerts. And 1995, my mother died. And that was pretty devastating. And so I moved to Vegas in 2001 after I went pretty, down that rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. That the 90s are not the 80s anymore.
Right.
And it's time to pay the piper. So I ended up here in Vegas and with family, and that turned out to be where I needed to be for the next 15, 20 years.
I read the story about how you didn't come out of the closet until your mother had passed away. That had to be horrific for you.
Well, now, see, yes, the whole thing, the whole growing up gay in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, it was traumatic. And the turnaround has been dramatic from what it was to what it is now, so that you have a whole generation who can't really understand how closeted America was.
Sure.
And what it meant to be different as a kid, And I was thinking about the other day, my life changed, and I had a real awakening and awareness and anger, feminist moment when I was about 5. And they made me put on a shirt to go outside in the summer. And I could not understand why I had to wear a shirt, why the boys could go outside without a shirt and I couldn't. And, it just, most little girls, I'm sure, go through that, but not to the extent that this is a violation of my personhood.
Yeah.
And it was my first conscious realization that the boy-girl not fair thing didn't fit me. I was cool being a girl without a shirt outside.
Right.
So, growing into that where that's acceptable to everybody, including me, has taken a long time. So for my mother to be where she was when she was perfectly normal. And it wasn't an unreasonable request in the moment.
Yeah, it's different era, totally different era.
Now it's like, okay, that's unfair, and I know better than to try to put anybody else through that, and I know how to tell people that's not good and blah, blah, blah. But if that's the worst she was going to do when I told her, was say, just don't tell anybody while I'm alive. Man, because, some kids get kicked out. Some kids get beat up. Some kids get all kind of stuff in that moment.
They kill themselves too.
Yeah, I mean, bad things can happen.
Sure.
And so that was, okay.
It is a very different era. I mean, I have so many friends who have children who have come out of the closet, and some who, at a very young age have transitioned, from female to male and male to female. It's a very different era. And I think it's important that they hear stories like yours, because they don't realize, like they'll be like, oh my God, my mom took my Amex away from me. And they think that that's the hardest thing in the world, when like they didn't realize like people like you basically held their lives back.
Yeah.
And weren't being 100% true to themselves. And this is what I want like the newer generations to understand, is that, yeah, you know what, there's so much out there. Like people will look at me and like, you're privileged, whatever. I had a lot of shit happen in my life too. Nothing as bad as, as you have, or I don't compare people's issues. But the thing that I try to explain to people is, I grew up in an era, I'm a little bit younger than you, I'm 45, but I grew up in an era, there was no internet. There was no fucking thing as the internet. If anybody had a digital camera around me in 1997, I'd be fucked. I'd be completely done for. You know what I mean?
So we have more pictures. I have more pictures on my wall than some people took in their whole lives,
right,
up until the 90s. I mean, pictures were rare. Picture day was a dress-up day where you sat down, mm-hmm. or that one uncle who had a camera came over at Christmas, and you took some pictures, and then they would fade away because they were Polaroids. And so,
right.
We have more documentation, we have more communication, we have more magic in our hands
and resources
than anybody could have imagined. We thought that this watch, this smartwatch,
mm-hmm.
With George Jetson's watch, I can make a phone call on this watch.
Right.
So we thought that was the height of cool, to be able to watch a movie on a bus, right. And then call somebody in Hawaii and tell them you're watching a movie on a bus.
Crazy shit, isn't it?
This is amazing. I mean, we take things for granted that I call
unbelievable.
Miracles.
Unbelievable.
This is a miracle. Come on, I'm talking to you.
Right.
You're where you are. I'm where I am. We're looking at each other.
We're 2,500 miles away.
Look at it, do it. I mean,
it's scary. It is scary. But do you find it more comfortable now doing stand-up?
Yes.
Or do you feel, because it's a hard time to be doing stand-up right now?
Yeah, but it's weird for me because the kind of stand-up I want to do requires is more leisurely than is being produced now. Okay. Right now, we're in a mass production frenzy of just turn it out, get it out, do it from your house. People have whole studios. Here we are in their homes, and they're making movies and they're eating up material. And I'm like, whoa, babe, let's do like a comedy TED Talk kind of thing, and just chill, have a drink, and have a more leisurely experience. So I call that show The Book of Marsha. And stand up when you're in the clubs. Yeah, I do that too. But my goal is more concert theater like.
Well, we have a mutual friend, which I don't think you even know about. So this is a person who I love more than most people on this planet, who has helped me out tremendously over the last however many years, is Carol Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
Carol is a dear, dear friend of mine. We even talked about her producing my first special, which is great. And she, again, another person in her 60s, and now has finally done 3 specials in a matter of 2 years during a pandemic. And you were on the 3rd one, which when I heard the lineup, I was actually more excited to see you than anybody else on the rest of the cast. How did you did she reach out to you, or is it through like agents, or?
I begged.
Again, that.
Yeah, I begged. I just called her up and begged. No, I didn't. I got a call, you interested? Sure. Pretty much it. I was in Atlanta.
Amazing.
Nick Cannon's Miracles Across 125th Street and Hope Flood's Comics Rock. And I had 2-3 more days to shoot. I had to fly to California, shoot the Carol's even more funny women of a certain age, and then fly back and do that. So like I left Monday morning and I was back Tuesday morning to go to work.
It was a great experience though, wasn't it?
Well, I wouldn't trade it. That's showbiz. And it was interesting and fun to be back in that kind of, I haven't been in that kind of schedule in a while, where you got every minute mapped out. So it was like the old days.
Yeah, I love the concept of the show, and one of the reasons why I'm so close with her is that I'm one of the few male comics who doesn't say female comedian. I believe if you're a comedian, you're a comedian. It's just the way that I was always brought up, and every time I personally put on a show, I guarantee you there's always one female comic on the show. And people are always like, well, women aren't funny. I'm like, no, fuck you, number one. The funniest people I've ever met in my life and the people who have helped me out the most in my career are two female comics. And that's Carol and Vanessa Hollingshead, the two people who have helped me out the most. And I always say I want to give back because when you do a show, when you produce your own show, people don't understand you have to have a little diversity. So I'm not your typical comic who's going to be like, I'm 6'3", 350. Okay. The easiest thing for me to do is do fat jokes the whole show. I ain't doing it because I'm not pigeonholing myself, but and I'm not doing dick jokes the whole time either, So I always want that diversity. I don't ever want to have material crossover on one of my shows.
Now, see, I get in trouble for that because there are people who would prefer everybody stay in little groups. When I did my talk show, when I do whatever, I always want my audience to be so mixed, not just, racially, gender, age, religious, whatever. I want whatever. I found that when I went to the Comedy Store, that was the best thing about the Comedy Store. Now, it wasn't always fair. I mean, there were tiers. There were a lot of people, didn't get on who could have. But you saw so many different points of view. Not so much that you saw people who automatically reflected yours. So you got to hear different perspectives. Like I said, I heard Charlie Hill. And I had never heard a Native man speak about what it meant to be a Native man in America. And to hear his jokes and to hear is like, oh, wow. And then here comes another perspective I had never encountered. I thought that was the future. And then it all got resegregated and even more segregated, and everybody... But that's a marketing technique that people use, the marketing of America to this audience, these people at this time. And I kind of think that we're ready and most people are willing to be more, that they're cool with all being together and just seeing them shows like that. It's just we're not giving them that. But nobody's...
I think funny is funny. Funny is funny, no matter what creed or nationality or gender or however you identify. If you're funny, you're funny. And one of the things that I can't stand about comedy, and I shouldn't even say this, but it's the comics who pigeonhole themselves into one little tiny market. So like we have the Italian comics who only play for the Italian comics. We have black comics who only do black rooms. We have women who are only doing all female shows. You have, look, I did tours all over the East Coast and I don't change my act. I won't change my act. I say that I will, if I got the opportunity to go onto the Apollo, I would do the same set on the Apollo stage as I would in Greenville, South Carolina, where there's Confederate flags and gun racks in the fucking parking lot. Funny's funny. And that's what it comes down to.
Yep. So I look at it and I wish we had more of that, but people end up doing what's available for them. What's available nowadays are these segregated shows. This became, and pretty much while I wasn't working. This is the world I came back to that I have to adapt to. And it's not necessarily the one to my liking, but when I came back, I, had to start all over. I started all over in bar shows, doing the way bringer shows.
Oh, God.
Bringer show. And I mean, I had to learn this game all over again. And not only that, how to do stand-up again.
Yeah.
And so where I am now is, I'd rather be doing that one-woman stand-up thing, that all-inclusive, I'm the whole fucking show.
That's exactly the way it should be, though. At this stage in your career, in your life, that's the way it should be.
Well, that's what we're working on, and hopefully we'll get to debut it soon.
I'd love to see it.
I'm excited to do it. I'm itching to do it.
Well, when you bring the show out to the East Coast, we'll warm up the crowd for you.
Right.
Fuck Carol. She had her shot already.
Well,
she'll watch us, so she'll tell me to go fuck myself.
Maybe
too.
The next show she should do is Funny is Funny.
Well, I said to her, why isn't there a funny men of a certain age? She goes, you have all the fucking television already. Knock it off.
Yeah. Well,
no, I understand. I understand why the show was done. I love the way that I saw the show before it hit the specials. I saw it in little theaters on St. Mark's Place in New York City with 6 people in the audience, blossom into 3 Showtime specials. And it's an inspiration for me. It really is. So I want to thank you.
All of us, thank you.
I really want to thank you for coming on here. This episode actually really meant a lot to me. We've had, musicians all over the place. We have some comics on, but like once in a while we'll get an act that I really just want to get in. I want to what's the word? Earworm?
Yeah.
Into your brain.
Earfuck works too.
I respect my elders, Marsha. Okay,
you don't have to. I'm a comedian.
Exactly. What's your social media stuff so our listeners can follow you?
Marsha Warfield. Wherever you are. Everything.
Thank you so much. Just from me, all my friends who love you as well. Thank you for coming on the show, and keep fucking rocking out like you are. I love seeing this next phase of your career.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.